Greetings. So in this video, I'm going to go through these aspects. Any in SJs and Aristotle's perception of similarities, we metaphor. SE situation specific, SI perception of similar situations. SJs like familiarity, best practice, and associative speech and personality. So personality, sorry. So what I'm going to try and do, I've got a little bee in my bonnet about the way Anglo-Jungian type defines SI as they seem to boil down essence of guardian and put it in one function, SI. But that is not really correct, is it? Because when you look at the break function in ENTJ and ENFJ, they're not really weak at that thing that MBTI thinks is SI, because if they were, then you would have people that were really bad at following a procedure and instructions. So that's why I think that that part of SJ-ness it's a confluence of three functions. SJ-ness is SI with TE or FE, and NE, and it's the NE part. It's the way that SJs use NE is different from how it is in MPs, significantly different. And so I will show you how SJs use NE. And I've done a few of these videos before because I'm trying to explain it better to myself and also to you, because I think I'm getting closer to it, but I'm just not quite there yet. Right, so I'm going to show you. Okay, this is some of my notes on Dario's NE and how I think it works with SI. And then we can sort of look at this and sort of check it through to see how SJ is sort of score on this scale. So this is an observation by David Kersey Sr. And this was the ultimate book, as in the final book, Personology. And this idea that their speech is associative on a concrete level, to me that's, in sociologics terms, super id NE, so tertiary or inferior, so that one bit of information easily calling forth another piece. So with the MPs, I mean, it's flowing from idea to idea. But I mean, I like this bit. Who's gotten what job? Who's recently born or has died? When and of what? And so all the facts and the free association between them. Then what we got here. When guardians remember one thing, however, distant from unrelated current, they mention it, and often this goes on and they recall something else. So they're finding the connections, but it's on a concrete level, on a fact-based level. So this is specific information concerning specific persons, lending itself to comparative value. Again, that is a species of NE, this comparison and amount. Strong retrieval, effortless association of such data, adopt the concrete word that is specific word reference. No, and then he puts the novels are boring. Right, so I put here, you can still tangent, but be concrete, because they will tangent on a concrete level. So comparison. So one of the ways to think of the functions is thinking of them as opposites. Hence why, so the way Dario defines SE and NE goes pretty well into getting them opposite, so that SE, immersing yourself in the present context, situation specific. So then we can say, okay, what does that then look like in ISTP and ISFP? What does the NE break look like? Well, They hate complex equivalence. ISTP, so John Grinder, NLP, does not like complex equivalence. So complex equivalence is saying, this means this. This is equal to this. And it says, no, it's not. That's not like Hitler at all. They don't like the comparison, because in making the comparison, they believe that information is deleted, the information about the specifics and nuances of the situation. Whereas NE will focus on the commonalities, because it's the commonalities which are important, because it's part of the pattern. So those two processes are opposite each other. And so if we can be sure of one definition, and then we can work out another definition that is opposite of that, and then we can see the patterning of that definition in different positions of the model, and then how that shows up, to sort of have an idea, okay, this definition appears to be correct because it lines up with experience of in the different positions of the model and for people who resemble that. That's why I mentioned that thing with SI, where if you're defining SI as being by the book, well, ENTJ and ENFJ are SI break, but they're not bad at that. What are they bad at? They get, ENTJ and ENFJ get stress-related illnesses. So they're out of touch with their with their physiology. So I have been pinged, but in the middle of a hangout. So will I interrupt this hangout to see a ping? Right, okay. So let's have a look at SJs, and then I'll go on to how I believe that SJs use NE, and how that's part of the SJness. What have we got here? A person needs recall to make connections work in synergy. That's true. In order to make a connection with, you've got the thing that's in front of you, well, what are you connecting it to? So this is an aspect of the subjectivity of it, because everyone has a different frame of reference. You could take an ENTP from 1,000 years ago and they look at something and they're going to make different connections. It's like, I frequently give the example of Douglas Adams. He watched the judo program and the guy said, in judo, you have to use your opponent's weight against himself. And so everybody hearing that principle would have thought, interesting. And they may, and the NE and the ENTPs and ENFPs might have used that principle in their own lives and made a unique connection. Whereas for Douglas Adams, his problem was, how do I solve the solution of Arthur and Ford surviving in space after they've just been thrown into space for 30 seconds? I need to rescue them. But the problem was all of the solutions were very, very improbable. So he had that in his mind. And then he watches this program. It says, use your opponent's weight against himself. And so he was able to then see the similarity and the connection of where use your opponent's weight against himself then became use the weight of the argument against itself. And then that's why, so he said, that what is the problem here? The problem is the improbability. Okay, the improbability of their rescue after being thrown into space. So how do I use the weight of the improbability against itself? So that's why he created the infinite improbability drive, where they were then rescued by Ford's semi-cousin and then a woman that Arthur totally failed to get off with at a party. So that's a huge coincidence. Yes, because of the infinite improbability drive. So it makes a feature of that. So it's a nice spoof of logic there. So but again, somebody else could have used that principle for so it's working in a different context. So it's going to be unique. So sometimes socionics will say the thing, oh, the potential is contained within the thing. No, it's not. The potential for the infinite improbability drive was not contained within the principle, that sound sample. It was because of the specific relation to other bits of knowledge. So let's see if this is true with SJs. how they use it. Often perceive our pattern or dynamic as emerging. No. What they do is they relate everything. Their filter is, how does this relate to what I know? And most people do that, but SJs love familiarity. And if something's familiar, that means it's very similar to what they already know. Now I'm going to bring in how, doing Aristotle's Poetics, and the Poetics were lecture notes that were translated, and then eventually got them. How do we know that they weren't the real deal in terms of Aristotle's proper writings? Because he was known, his writing style was known as a river of gold. So these were sort of like, people think that his lecture notes and or somebody, because it was like they were so condensed. So the best way to understand Aristotle is to read Story by Robert McKee first, well, the Poetics, because he's part of the Chicago school of neo-Aristotelianism. And then when you get those principles, you realize those principles were in the Poetics. It's just that a lot of people have misinterpreted the Poetics. So what McKee did is that and the Chicago school, is he combined it with Stanislavski. So anyhow, and he was writing about the skill in creating metaphor, Aristotle, and he wrote that the key talent in metaphor is the perception of similarities. So the relationship between the elements in the metaphor is the same relationship as with something else. So for instance, Peter Schiff will say that the Federal Reserve in the United States has shot up the United States economy on monetary heroin. So the relationship between the thing of the stimulus, so you've got the stimulus, and then you've got a false high in the situation with the drugs, and then you've got the monetary stimulus. So the relationship between the elements is similar, but the elements are different. Now somebody else, upon hearing that metaphor, might think, monetary heroin? Yeah, but this is different and this is different. So looking at how the specifics are different. So you consider different points of view from the SE point of view, especially ISDP. They want all the details and all of the specifics. And whereas the MP is more about the commonalities. So, but sometimes the devil is in the detail. So often unrelated ideas to see what potential they might suggest. No, not unrelated ideas. They don't do the unrelated ideas, but they do have that subjective sensing that we went over with associative speech. Keep following tangents and new ideas without limiting yourself. Yeah, again, they don't tangent on an abstract level. It's on a concrete level. I keep getting pinged. Right. I will close that. All right. So we said that, following tangents. Again, it's like, oh, I remember that. Oh, I used to have a red sock. Oh, I love that red sock. Just something like that. Or it's like with SJs, with like, say, SJs in the United States with baseball and all the memories and all the nostalgia. Again, it's connections, anchoring, things like that. Intermediate use. Yeah, this is weird because Dario had, this is weird. He had introductory use, basic use, and advanced use. And I think a lot of times people use introductory and basic sort of synonymously. So it's like, no, I'll change it to basic and intermediate. I'll rename it so how I want it to be. Right. Logical moments and coincidences, they happen. No, SJs don't do that. Brainstorming and trust what emerges from it. Not really, no, because it's what they're familiar with. They take the product of it from other people. So it's a particular aspect of any that the SJs use. What have we got here? Right. So, because I'll really investigate this. Try new ideas and interactions because they're new and different. No. Enjoy playing with random connections and patterns. No. but they do like the connections. It's just like with the NJs, with say INTJ and INFJ, not being good at immersing themselves in the present context and using power, but they really admire it. And it can come through in slight ways in specific circumstances. So extroverted consensus can come through when INFJ enacts the role of counselor, and then they guide somebody and push them in a certain direction. INFJs admire the power sensing, the assertiveness in ISFPs, because there's a connection there on between the sort of like the NFness of the INFJ and the FI of the ISFP, so they can sort of connect on that level. And also, what else does ISFP? So they have that extroverted sensor that they admire, and then also ISFPs can have that NI thing going on, and quite a few ISFPs will get mistaken for NFs. You just have to look at the level of power sensor. And so that's why knowing the artisan temperament, then you can then see the difference. So I'll talk about the connections and how SJs make connections in a moment. Oh, I have one viewer. Weave into current dynamics of a situation aspects of other random seeming contexts. No, but SJs will do something like this. Not quite, but they'll do something like this. Oh, this reminds me of the time, because for SJs, for SPs, it's about improvising in the present context, immersing yourself in the present context. Yes, they're going to use experience, but it's like taking in all of the details, analyzing the situation, or as SPs would put it, reading the situation. So these phrases, reading the situation, situational awareness. So think in sport, SPs are very good at situational awareness and making split-second decisions. Think of the decisions that a quarterback has to make. And they have a lot more time than somebody, than a hitter in baseball or batsman. And it was actually somebody gave me, an INTJ resembler gave me the example of where NE would not be good. And that was as like a racing car driver. You need to be totally focused, not thinking of other contexts. So SJs like familiar circumstances, because when it's familiar, they know what to do. Because they have these rules of what to do, these standard operating procedures. They don't like the situation to dictate what to do. The way SP is, like that attitude of, okay, I'm absorbing here and I can improvise. So there is that thing of, so the specifics of the situation, and then NE being a part of it, a big part of NE being trans-contextual thinking. So the commonalities between situations. But when an SJ sees a situation, they're looking to, how is this familiar? What is the right technique for this situation? What is the right process? What is the best practice? And the best practice being, this is what you do across these similar situations. This situation calls for this particular best practice, this particular technique. So maybe in a social situation, if you've got, I would say, with SFJs, it might be, okay, in this situation, we do this. Like that might be the manner that they learn, a particular social convention. Oh, in this situation, this is appropriate. It's a bit of FE with NE there, I would say. So I did something else. So on this actual score, on this the way this is defined, you would not actually score SJs that highly on NE, but they do tangent on a concrete level, because you've got that here. I don't know if the person saw that who is just watched. So here, again, concrete associative speech. So this is how I think the sort of the functions of SJness, how it comes together. So we've got here SI max types like to use the same method. I think that's true. I think it's they like to use the same method. They don't like to improvise. That is not their preference. And then I've put there they like to use the same method from their toolbox of different methods. They have different methods. So if we want to be super rude about it, we could say that the SJ robot, they need more and more sophisticated algorithms, more and more techniques, and then they use the appropriate technique. Now, I'm somebody who, having learnt technique from Robert McKee's book, and I'm looking at that, it took me 100 pages into the book, and about he's got techniques of screenwriting before I thought, you know what, he's right, because I was resistant to it. There is such a thing as good technique, as good form, things like that. And then from this toolbox of different methods. But here, can still be consistent with TI minus method switcher in, say, SITX. Method switching is not the same as improviser. So it's for instance, oh, I'm in a situation, somebody's in a gardening situation. Oh no, what do I do? Well, this expert said this expert said this, and 5 different gardening experts, and choose the one that fits the situation. But the guardian temperament is still going towards the authority, the person that they respect, rather than the SP mindset and the NT mindset of thinking, oh, I'm going to do it my own bloody way. Where their preference is to do it their way, not to follow the conventions of others. And so this is why the NTs and the SPs will lean a little bit more towards ending up being creative. They also make more mistakes, but in trying out these new things, certainly with the SPs, they really want to try something else. They would probably rather try something out and fail their preference rather than do something for them, you know, because at least it'd be an interesting experience and that they will learn from. So this is why one of the NLP written by a couple of STPs, where they would have the belief, it's not necessarily true, but a useful belief, there's no such thing as failure, there is only feedback. And if you learn from that experience. In fact, the only failure is to fail to learn from failure, I suppose. Right. Again, method switcher. In similar situations, this requires a perception of similarities. You've got all of these techniques, and it's like, oh, what does this situation call for? Right. And then so with this particular definition, then we can say, okay, does that fit the experience of those 2 types that are supposed to be really weak at NE? So ISTP and ISFP, TISX and FISX. How are they? So the way that they are weak at it tells us something about how to define NE. So TISX doesn't do perception of similarities. They like to be immersed in the present context, all of the details and nuances of the present context. So that gives some bearing on what NE is, how to define it. And that is the opposite of the NE DOMs and the NE auxiliaries. They do love the perception of similarities. TISX doesn't do perception of similarities as well because NE break. So it will be more situation specific. And that relates to Dario's definition of SE. And the Dario's definition of SE relates to the artisan temperament of wanting to improvise and being good under pressure. All of the strengths of SPs where they're not good at, they don't have that preference for going by routine and standard operating procedure. More situation specific and improvise more. Same for ISFP. And so I can give you an example of ISFP. Pat Patterson, the songwriting guru, let's see if I have retained that one, that one viewer. And so Pat Patterson, he would always write about in a song prosody. And he gave an example. He doesn't want a song where someone's, and he gave an example of a song where someone talks about how horrible the world is, and they go from one country to another country to another country to another country, loads of different situations, and he does not like that. Whereas the MPs might think, yes, but those different situations illustrate the theme. For him, for Pat Patterson, he wants prosody. So prosody in the context of songwriting is everything working together to get the same ideas across. So if you want something to be stable, the idea is stable and the rhymes are stable, more perfect rhymes. If you have an unstable idea, you want more unstable rhymes, so they become more assonance and consonance rhyme and additive and subtractive rhyme, because it has a different feeling, because it's less related to it. There's a thing in music that I forgot. I hardly know anything about music. Tension and resolution. Yes, that's it. And so he wants those things to line up. When it's more stable, line lengths are very similar, and the kinds of rhymes are very similar. So everything is integrated together. Everything is working in union towards the same idea. And you want the melody to, where everything fits the idea. It gets a little bit unstable, so the music gets a little bit unstable. If you have a song where someone's introducing a song and it's quite sad at the start, it would be like, well, you don't want that music jaunty, you want it to fit. And so there's your prosody, your integration. That was interesting. Sarah MBTI, I think that's her YouTube name. Yes, they analyzed the situation in order to act. I think that is like I said, I think she got it spot on there. So right, so right, okay, here we go. Switching between methods. Okay, that was that bit. Okay, this is this bit here. SI max types like to use the same method from their toolbox of different methods in similar situations. Again, they like familiarity. This requires a perception of similarities between now and past situations. Again, the past focus of SJs, in order to choose the most suitable method. SI types, SI max, are past focused. And then you've got SE for these ones. Again, immersing yourself in the present context, improvising, all artisan temperate things. Hypothesis, SI and NE integrated in SJs. And then also what you have in SJs, you have this liking for a standard operating procedure in STJs and a liking for social conventions and manners in SFJs. So you have that. And because it's always with them, what's in the ego row? It's either FE or TE. And TE is very, well, it's more standard operating procedure in STJs. The NTJs, it's the practical thinking allied with SE and NI. So they improvise a bit more and are adaptive. But if the method works, they'll use it. Right, okay, this is, and then the perception of similarities up there. Aristotle's term in poetics, via translation, of course. Oh, and then we've got here. Here's some bits. Ethics of emotions, E. Emotion reading. A little bit more objective. So then I've got two there. Look at me bloody tangenting all over the place. Where's number 2? Emotion reading number 2. So where does number 2 go? If I got a little extra on number 2. Oh no, that's it. That must have been from somewhere else. Oh no, that's it. The emotion reading goes to there, then there. So I'll start here. Oh yeah, and that's 3. Yeah, so there. Okay, so I'll start here with method. Right, method. And where did I put method? Method must be somewhere up there. Okay, method. NE and SI combines with TE, objective practical thinking in STJs, NE and SI combined with FE, group harmony, and cultural ethics and emotion reading. 2. And now I'll go to 2. Emotion reading, ethics of emotions, more objective than FI. Put above how they feel, FI, the interaction is going. So again, the subject, so put that above how they feel the interaction is going. And then we've got the FI bit here, compared to FE, of the interaction. And FE is ethics of relations, more subjective. FO ego types more focused on this. So they're more about, FPs are more about rapport and the feeling of connection and similarity with somebody else. The FJs, especially the SFJs, are about the emotions that are being given off and the social conventions around the interaction. So SJs across different cultures will be different because they're so much products of their cultures, and their cultures have these. These are the generalized rules. And what does a rule go? It goes across situations. This is the rule for these kind of situations. So you can see that it's part of NE. So the way SJs use NE is a little bit like they like the product of it from other people. What the NPs do is they create rules and generalities and theories, and then another 5 minutes they'll change their mind and come up with other ones. So that is my comments on NE in SJs. And so SJness is not all to be put in one functional bucket and then call that SI. It is, in my opinion, FE and TE, FE stroke TE, an EJ function working with NE. This sort of like, they're suggestive for, yeah, give me a connection, give me a general rule. And then you've got the MPs, we're going to see this is a pattern. This is the pattern across these situations. And it's like the SJs, yes, give me that pattern. I want that pattern. I want a rule. I am an ESTJ. I do not know what to do without a standard operating procedure. I am an SSJ. What do I do? What's the right thing in this situation? What is the proper manners? What is the thing to do? So you can see that they are suggestive for that, an aspect of NE. So that is the best I can do at the moment with sort of my thoughts on where SJness comes from on a functional level. Now, there's something else which is related, and that is the functional basis of temperament with Dario that he talked about. And he got this from the Barons, where he said that for SPs, the kind of perception is more important than the kind of cognition. Because for NFs and NTs, because they're abstract, they are cognitive based. They do more analysis and abstractify from that than the sensing types. The sensing types are not doing as much interpretation because they are about the concrete. They're about the way the data is. Now, how that data is then perceived then becomes more important for the sensing types. For the SPs, it's this particular data in this situation. For the SJs, it's, okay, this data, and then they do a little bit of the anything. Oh, this data is a little bit like this. So you can also say that when SJs use NE badly, they tend to fall into that stereotypical thinking. Oh, here's this person with this background, therefore he has these traits. So again, that's, poor use of NE. This person is part of this class, this category, therefore this. And the MPs also do that, but a little bit more nuanced. So it's, again, it's NE, but at a lower level. It's just like with the NJs, with the SE, particularly the, they admire it, but they're not as good and as nuanced with it. Probably because their temperament gets in the way of them being good at certain features of SE, such as adaptability and expediency. Because when you've got these principles, it's like an SP and ESTP would say, like Richard Bandler, he would say, you've got limiting beliefs. You have beliefs which are limiting your ability to adapt in the situation and take options. The NS would say to Bandler, you've not got any scruples or principles. You will just do whatever is expedient in the situation. And he will say, yes, I will do whatever is expedient in the situation, and I am proud of it. So these different viewpoints, when you can sort of bring together Kersey temperament and functions, and I believe that they work well together, and that Dario Nardi's research has sort of validated these kind of things, and is a good model. But I will sign off by saying that they are models. People are not types. They resemble types, and it's about degrees of resemblance. You know, if someone was equivalent to a type, then somebody would say, I am an INTP, and then somebody else would say, I'm also an INTP. Well, if you are the same as INTP and this other person is the same as INTP, does that mean you're exactly the same as the other person? No. So when we say we are like a type, well, that's why Dario says best fit type. And what does Linda Bowen say? Best fit type pattern. And then also, she now uses the term personality patterns. And then what did they say on the Enneagram Masters video? Catherine Farber was there, David Daniel was there, Tom Condon was there, various people, and they said towards the end or halfway through, hey, it's just a model. And then he says they're about patterns, not types. So it's pattern. And so I will even say individuation pattern, because the way somebody is not just an aspect of their predisposition, but also their sort of social role that they are predisposed to play. Because when somebody plays that role, there's a sort of a feedback of it. So one thing to think about would be, how would these 16 types be expressed 2,000 years ago? What would an INTP look like? Would there even be an INTP? Maybe in Greece, maybe in Athens, but in certain situations, would the type develop? Would they individuate according to those patterns? And so if you look at individuation in Jung, he thinks that in a free society, people would learn to individuate naturally, but also that you individuate from a whole. So when you then look at Kersey, he's got this internal point of view of these temperament people want these things. And then he has a little bit of a diagnostic point of view of they use these words, have these beliefs, they'll talk about these things, they'll use tools like this, or they'll be adaptive, or they'll be concrete, they'll be abstract. And then he has this other bit where he has a theory, a sort of a sociological theory of these are the role variants that correspond to these types. So it's just the idea that ESTP is the best at being a con man, a con artist. But it does not mean that all ESTPs are con artists, or that all con artists are ESTPs. It's just that they have the best skill set for being the con man. Or it's like ESTDA is naturally predispositioned to be the supervisor. That was really hard for INTP. Like, let's stick to a standard procedure and make everybody follow it, because they're weak with the power sensor. So it's how these things then correspond with this then theory of vocations. So then you can have a situation where you can take from socionics and take from Kersey and then look at how particular type combinations will conflict more than others. So it's my belief that ESTPs and INFPs conflict more than ESFP and INTP, because ESFP is not using SE in an aggressive way like ESTP. They're using it more to resist other people controlling them. So what I'm sort of saying is the way that ESTPs use SE will hit the brake function of INFP more than the way ESFPs use SE will hit the INTP's brake function, because for the INTP as well, I'm not trying to control you anyway. So there's no need. So there's nothing for the ESFP to resist. So they're both informant that way and adaptable in tool usage. Whereas ESTP is ultimately adaptable and INFP is more, no, you want to stick to these principles. So it is said that the NFs are cooperative, but really what they are is cooperative with their own beliefs. And so because they are cooperative with their own beliefs and principles, they can be, from the STP point of view, limited by those beliefs and principles, in that it stops them from being ultimately flexible. And the NS might say, yeah, but what you did was unethical and also illegal. I was adaptable. The situation called for that. So that's the tactical intellect. And we did a hangout on that yesterday, and I'll put the link in. So with the tactical intellect, it's doing whatever is necessary to achieve the thing. The ends justify the means, but not then thinking about the consequences. And you see this writ large with Donald Trump, where it's just too quick, tactical thinking. What did he do in the primaries? He lied about stuff and whatever was politically expedient to get elected. So all this stuff, oh, let's build a wall. The Republicans were in power for 2 years and they never built a wall. They just want to use it as an election issue. Because a lot of the Republicans want cheap labor. Right. Right then, so that will be it. So that's my own. Just got 2 viewers just as I'm winding up. Oh dear. Second viewer. Oh, that second viewer is gone. Or maybe the first one went and the second viewer stayed. Right then. Or maybe they both went and then another third one came. Right. So I'll stop now.